Hello and welcome. Right, today we're going to look at religion and discrimination. We'll look at a bit of a theory in the area, and then how our religion and beliefs are protected under the law. And then we'll also look at some of the exceptions that we have under the law. Right, so I'm going to share my screen now. All right, so religion and discrimination. All right, so religion can be said to be the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power. Different religions believe in different things and they worship differently. You know, it is used to unite people around a shared norms and values, and then it encourages social cohesion. Religion also promotes norms like morality, fairness, charity, and justice. All right, so some religions tell people, what is right and wrong, and discourage them from doing what is wrong. So, for instance, in Christianity, we have the 10 Commandments that tell us things like "Thou shalt not kill" or "Thou shalt not steal." Things like that. But then religion also teaches, people to be fair to others and treat others with kindness, as well as, ask people to give to those who are less fortunate. Then Durkheim believes that societies use religion as a form of social control. So this is where people's behaviors, thoughts, and appearances are regulated through religion. So you find some religion, that will dictate to their people how to dress, the sort of thoughts that they are encouraged to entertain or not encouraged to entertain, and also how they should, how they should behave. And then people, do behave well, not only out of fear of their loved ones, disapproving, but also out of a desire, not to be condemned by God. Okay, right. So there are supposed to be, punishment against those who disobey God. People are expected to abide by the 10 Commandments, if it's Christianity, and these commandments, form part of their societal norms. Religion also provides people with a sense of purpose in life, which helps them see their lives as meaningful. They believe that, God has created them for a reason, and then they seek to find the meaning of life and the purpose for which they have been created. And things that happen to them, they see it as if it's a God's plan, for their lives. Then some people believe in predestination. Okay, so that is, that God preordains everything that comes to pass. So therefore, having wealth and power, was seen as an indication of God's favor. And then many rulers in societies were believed to be given the right to rule by God. Okay, so religion, therefore became an agent of social stratification, where people were categorized into groups, based on their wealth, social status, power, race, and gender. Okay, and this, benefited those in power by legitimizing the status quo and framing existing inequality as part of a divine plan. All right, so in addition to entrenching political and economic inequalities, religion also contributes to gender and racial inequalities. All right, because you see that all the world's religion are patriarchal in nature, with religious texts often describing men in the image of God and women in subordinate roles to men. So we have verses in the Bible, where we're told that, Adam was created in God's own image, and then Eve was created from Adam's ribs, and she is expected to, serve and obey him. All right, so, and then the verses from religious texts, have been used to perpetuate and maintain the oppression and control of women by men. Some texts forbid women from assuming leadership roles or speaking in religious gatherings. We can see that in biblical and Islamic texts, while other texts, forbid women from working in close proximity with men, unless it is necessary. All right, so we'll find some of that, in the Islamic text. Some texts, also prohibit women, from leadership, because it is believed that women are incapable of having the qualities of holding such positions. And then some other texts, see, some qualities, such as wisdom, reasoning, or alertness, as lacking in a woman. All right, so therefore, a woman's testimony, because all these qualities are lacking in a woman, they see a woman's testimony as being insufficient if there is no other woman to collaborate it. But, in a man, they believe a man has those qualities. Therefore, one man's testimony, is sufficient and does not need collaboration. All right, so we'll have some of these, texts that are, that are discriminatory towards women. Okay, they have things sort of trying to, put women under men, subordinate them and submit them under men. All right, so individuals are indoctrinated with these religious views, through socialization and education to accept them as as natural and a divine order from God. According to Stopler, culture and religion are typical examples of hierarchical power, used to induce individuals to behave in a prescribed manner. All right, but such acts, are exhibited in such a manner that it is seen as actions that are freely chosen by the individual. All right, so what he's trying to say here is that, culture and religion, they are like tools, that are used to get an individual to behave in a certain way, by telling him or her, what to do or what not to do. All right, so for example, a woman, may be asked to cover up her body, for chastity's sake. All right, but it is done in such a way that the woman will believe, that she herself has made a conscious choice to cover herself up, rather than a manipulation of, culture or religion. Then anthropological research, postulates that culture and religion, become part of an individual. Okay, and they are used as means to restrict the individual's actions and feelings, by shaping their world concepts and reality. Right, so the Bible, says that God created the world in 7 days and created man from mud and woman from the man's ribs, and that a woman should be subordinate to the man. All right, so religion has now been used to shape a Christian's worldview and beliefs, and what they think nature is and what reality, should be. Okay, so right, so because of the way culture and religion are presented, all right, so attempts that people, advocates, have made to challenge these views are usually met with stiff opposition, from people, because they would be like, how dare the advocates question the or try to alter nature and culture, because religion and culture, has been set in such a way, that people think it's nature. Right. So if advocates try to challenge this, they are met with stiff opposition. And then those who attempt to challenge discriminatory interpretations of religion are silenced and excluded from the community. Then in addition to this, these are, they are age-long practices, and people tend to revere the old over the new, okay, and hold them as superior. All right, so this is then used to maintain ancient rules and immunize biblical rules from, modern interpretations. All right, so yeah, so that's kind of how religion is used to perpetuate inequality, in where here I've kind of like sort of focused on gender and not race, all right? But religion is used to perpetuate inequality, between groups. And it is done in such a way that it appears natural, it is an order from God, okay? So therefore, people, should behave and comply, with the religious text. All right, so I want us to now go on to look at some of the laws we have in this area. All right, so all these that I've said, are people's religion or beliefs. Okay, it is valid to them. Okay, no matter how irrational we think that they are, it is valid to them, and they are entitled to believe in it. All right, so the law protects our right to freedom of religion, and then the right to manifest our beliefs. All right, so we have the freedom to believe in whatever we choose to believe in. Okay, and this is an absolute right. All right, so when I say it's an absolute right, it means that nobody has a right to interfere with our religious beliefs. However, in manifesting our religion, the state can interfere with this, okay, because manifestation of a religion is a qualified right. All right, so the state can interfere with it. And when we talk of a manifestation, we're talking about, the practices that people carry out in the worship of their religion. All right, so the state can interfere with it when it is necessary in the interest of public protection of morals, public order and safety, and the rights and freedoms of others. All right, so we will consider this in more detail in our lecture on discrimination and human rights law. All right, so yeah, carry on with the Equality Act. So prior to the employment equality, religion or belief regulations of 2003, there was no formal protection for religious beliefs or practices. All right, so our first protection, was in 2003. Then the Equality Act of 2006 extended the protection outside of the field of employment, to include facilities, goods, and services. Right, so protection for religious belief is now contained in the Equality Act 2010, all right? And it is listed in Section 4 as one of the protected characteristics, and it is protected under Section 10. All right, so when we talk of belief, it means any religious or philosophical belief, and it also includes a lack of belief. Okay, so it's not just only religious belief, it can also be a philosophical belief, and all these are protected under the law. Okay, so so like I said, all religions, all recognized religions, and even the ones that are not so well known, okay, all of them, including atheism, they are all protected. All right, so religion does not have to include faith or worship, okay, but affects how a person perceives the world around them and how they live their lives. All right, so it has been held in the case of Granger, PLC, and Nicholson, that belief in climate change is a philosophical belief. Okay, so all these, are protected. The belief does not, it does not have to be something that governs the entirety of a person's life. Okay, but it has been left to the courts, to determine what constitutes a religion. All right, but not to, look at the validity of that belief. All right, so we have a protection of belief under the Equality Act. So for a religious or philosophical belief to be protected under the Equality Act, it must meet the following criteria, all right, which was given as a guidance in the case above that I mentioned above, Granger PLC and Nicholson. All right, so these are the criteria that has to be met before a religion or belief will be protected. So it must be genuinely held. It must be a belief and not an opinion or viewpoint based on the present state of information available. It must be a belief as to a weighty and substantial aspect of human life and behavior. It must attain a certain level of cogency, seriousness, cohesion, and importance. And then it must be worthy of respect in a democratic society. All right, not incompatible with human dignity, and it must not conflict with the fundamental rights of others. All right, so when these are met, okay, a belief, will be protected under the law. And then we'll have a manifestation of belief. Right, so protection is not only offered for being a member of a religious group, all right, but also for the manifestation of that religious belief. All right, so such manifestations, could include, the treating of certain days for worship. Okay, so say for instance, Sundays, people go to church on Sundays. Okay, or people go to mosque on Fridays. All right, so that's a manifestation of belief. Or following a particular dress code. Okay, so some religion, require that people dress a certain way. Okay, so all that will come under a manifestation of belief. Then we'll have the code of practice on employment. Points out that restrictions on some manifestations of belief may amount to indirect discrimination unless it can be objectively justified. Okay. Again, we're going to look at some of these, under when we look at human rights. All right, so it is usually difficult, to deal with cases under religion. Normally in discrimination law, only indirect discrimination can be justified. But we see that, cases that deals with issues of manifestation of a religion is usually linked directly to the religion in question. Okay, and this could be considered, as direct discrimination. Right, so I want us to, consider some cases under religion. All right, so we'll have Ahmad against the Inner London Education Authority, okay, which is a 1977 case. All right, so in the case, the court rejected the claimant's appeal, that he had been discriminated against based on his religion. All right, so in that case, Ahmad, he usually missed 45 minutes of work on Fridays because, he had to attend the mosque for prayers. Then the school then offered him 4.5 days work a week, so that the other half he can then go away, to attend his prayers. But he turned this down and resigned. Now you can see that, going to mosque is a manifestation of his belief, but denying him to go, impacts on his ability to practice his religion. And, this could be considered discriminatory because he's not allowed to practice his decision. However, the court rejected his claim, stating that, giving him time off, would be like as if, the Muslim community are given a preferential treatment. Okay, so this was what Lord Denning said in the case. However, Lord Scammon, gave a dissenting judgment, and he said that the application of that rule, would mean that any Muslim who took their religious duties seriously, would not be employed full time as a teacher. All right, and which is what this is. This is right. However, I mean, this is an old case, and it may be decided differently today. Then we look at another case, which is ASME and Keckley's Metropolitan Borough Council. All right, so in this case, Mrs. ASME, was a devout Muslim, and she had worn a veil, since she was 15. She was employed as a support worker in a school. Then in her first week, she asked if she could wear a veil when working with male teachers. The local authority refused, stating that obscuring the face and mouth reduces the non-verbal signals required between adult and pupil. The desire to express a religious identity does not overcome primary judgment for optimal communication between adults and children. Right. So this was what she was told. Okay, and they refused. That she had to take the veil off because as she's teaching pupils, that they need to see her face and her lips. When she is talking. All right, but she continued to wear her veil, and then her employment was suspended. And then she brought a claim for direct and indirect discrimination, indirect religious discrimination. But her direct discrimination claim was dismissed, because her comparator would be a person who covered her face for other reason other than religious reasons. All right. So if you remember direct discrimination, if you're bringing a claim, you have to bring a comparator who is in a similar situation as the claimant. All right. So her comparator would have been somebody who also covered their face, but not for religious reasons, because this is she covered her face because of her religion. But we can see that, if somebody covered her face not for religious reason, that the employer would have still been, acted the same way that they acted towards her. All right. So because of this, direct discrimination, claim was rejected. Then the court accepted, that the requirement not to wear a veil, put her at a disadvantage, okay, because it would stop her from manifesting, her religion. However, they said, it was justified as a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim, because, what the local authority, their reason was, children are learning, they need to see the facial expressions. Learning is not just about what is spoken, okay, but about, expressions used as well, okay, and the children needed to see those expressions. So, the court, said that this was justified. All right, so religious claims, they can be tricky, and if the employer can't justify it, then they will not be held liable. The one thing about this case, this ASME's case, is that it highlights how protection from discrimination, has to be balanced with the needs and rights of other groups in society. Okay, so somebody, you're protected under the law to do a certain thing, all right, but it has to be balanced with the needs of others, in that society. So in this case, they perceive that the needs of the children, took precedence over manifestation of her religion. All right, so this is why, her claim was rejected. Right, so occupational requirements, okay, or in the previous legislation, it was called the genuine occupational requirements. All right, so these are exceptions to unlawful discrimination. Okay, it allows employers to discriminate in certain circumstances. All right, so we have Schedule 9 of the Equality Act, which provides that in some circumstances, an employer may be permitted to require an applicant or an employee to be of a particular sex and not to be a transsexual. Okay, so that's not to be transsexual, so that could be homosexual or something. Or to have rules with regard to marriage, civil partnership, or sexual orientation. Okay, so that's covered there. Homosexuality is covered there. All right, so this part of the Equality Act gives an employer to discriminate on the basis of sex, or the person being a transsexual, on the basis of marriage, civil partnership, or sexual orientation. Okay, so they're allowed to do that. So then for an employer to be allowed to do this, all right, they will need to show that, number one, that the employment was for the purposes of an organized religion. Okay. Then number two, that the application of the requirement engages the compliance or non-conflict principle. Now, for a requirement to engage the compliance principle, the requirement which the employer puts in place has to comply with the doctrines of the religion. And then to engage the non-conflict principle, the requirement will help to avoid conflict with the strongly held views of a significant number of followers. And then the third thing that the employer needs to show is that the person to whom he applies a requirement does not meet it, or they have grounds, to believe that they don't meet it. Okay, so let me just give an example here. Okay, so let's say, for instance, we know, I think Catholic churches, women still can be priests, all right? So this section, the Schedule 9 of the Equality Act says that an employer may be permitted to require an applicant or employee to be of a particular sex, okay? And it says that the employer needs to show that the employment was for the purposes of an organized religion, all right? So a Catholic church, it is an organized religion, okay? So they are allowed to discriminate against women, not to be a Catholic priest. Okay, so they will say, we only want men to be Catholic priests. It also allows them to discriminate, to have rules in regard to marriage. Remember, marriage is a protected characteristic, okay? But here it allows them to discriminate on marriage. So they can say, as a Catholic priest, you must not be married, okay? They're allowed to do that. Or a homosexual, okay? They don't want a homosexual to be a priest, they're allowed to do that. Which other one there? Or transsexual, okay? So they're allowed to do any of that. Okay, so the requirement must be a proportionate way of meeting the compliance or non-conflict principle, and should be used for a limited amount of positions. Okay, so for example, ministers of religion. All right, so an example was given in the code of practice. All right, so this says that a mosque, so the example was given that a mosque wants to employ 2 youth workers, one to provide guidance on the teachings of the Quran, and the other purely to organize sporting activities. And then they say that they do not want homosexuals. All right, so you can see that both roles, are for the purposes of, they are for organized religion, because it's a mosque that is, employing these people. However, the first one, the first one will engage the compliance and non-conflict principles, because not being a homosexual complies with the doctrine of Islam. Okay, and this is somebody that is coming to instruct their children on the teachings of Islam. Okay, then the second one, the second one also complies with the non-conflict principle, because a significant number of their followers are against homosexuality and would not want a homosexual, to teach their children. Okay, so this it complies within the compliance and non-conflict principle. Okay, and it is for the purposes of organized religion. And then the third one that says, it applies to that person. So if this person is a homosexual, then they are allowed to deny him that job. Okay, and it will not be considered discrimination, or it can be an occupational requirement. Okay, so they will be allowed. However, the second one, may be unlawful, sorry, because the person is only there to organize sports, okay? They have nothing to do with their religion, or they're not even going to teach about their religion, all right? So this person may not even be coming into the mosque, at all. He may only turn up on the days, that they have sporting days, just to teach them about sports or help them organize their sports, all right? So therefore, the second one does not engage the compliance or the non-conflict principle, okay? And if they deny him a job, then, it may be unlawful. Okay, so an employer with an ethos based on religion or belief, may be able to apply a requirement for a worker to be of a particular religion, if he can show that it is an occupational requirement, that the requirement is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim, that the person to whom the employer applies the requirement does not meet it. Okay, so an employer can also do that, all right? So if it's an ethos, if the organization has an ethos based on a religion, all right? But this is not only restricted to religious organizations, all right? So for example, a Christian hospice, can require that its chief executive to be a Christian, all right, in order to maintain the ethos of that organization. Okay, so this means, so they can apply that, for the chief executive, all right. However, if they're not asking for like the carers who work there and the nurses who work there to also be Christians, then that may not be right. Okay, so the employer's ethos and the nature of the job, should also be considered. All right, then we have Schedule 22, Paragraph 3, which provides exceptions from religious discrimination, for certain posts in schools, all right, where the governing instrument, requires the head of schools to be of a particular religion. Okay, so let's say, for instance, a Catholic school may want their head of school to be a Catholic, okay, and they will state that, and they're allowed to do that, okay. Whereas if they're not asking for their teachers, all the teachers to be of from the be Catholics, then that may not be necessary and may not be permitted. Then Paragraph 4 permits faith schools to discriminate for certain purposes. Okay, so for example, they can apply religious considerations for appointment of head, pay or promotion of their teachers. Okay, they can dismiss a teacher for failure to give religious education efficiently, and then they can also apply preferences, for certain teachers. All right, so the law allows discrimination in certain circumstances. Okay, and that's it. Okay, that's it for religion and discrimination. We are all entitled to have a religion or not have a religion. Okay, we're entitled to believe in whatever we like, all right, and it will be protected under the law. However, when issues of the manifestation comes up, there are certain restrictions, and then we will see some of that, when we look at our discrimination and human rights law. Okay, so religious and philosophical beliefs are protected under Section 10 of the Equality Act. Okay, and that's it. So I hope to see you again soon. Bye.